powered by Reviting, streaming from the Reviting Digital Studio. It's the David Daily. Exploring frontier technology, artificial intelligence, quantum innovation, and the intersection of faith, funding, and the future. Here's your host, David Goki.
Welcome to another episode of the David Daily Show. Today we have a special segment called Funding, Faith, and Future Tech. And if you're just tuning in for the first time, please stick around for Beyond the Bag, where our special guests will share something in their travel bag. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Jason Alexander, the CEO of Chief AI. Jason, welcome to the show with me today.
Thanks, David. Great to be here.
Nice. So for those of us who haven't met you before or who haven't heard of Chief AI, could you tell us just a little bit about your company and kind of how you got started?
Absolutely. At the simplest of levels, the Chief AI is an outsourced or fractional Chief AI Officer service primarily geared towards small and medium-sized companies across many different industries. We focus as a business on 4 pillars of service, which primarily involve advisory, consulting, education, and governance, and help organizations from early stage adoption to full AI enablement and AI transformation across the enterprise. And we are very happy to be here on the show and looking forward to sharing some knowledge and learn a little bit of something along the way.
Nice. Well, the live stream concept and live stream gives us the ability to fully have conversations around those topics. So I'd like to ask you actually a very quick question about governance, because this has come up in a couple of circles, especially in the AI and faith nonprofit, where I contribute as a contributing fellow, and we bring the world's wisdom into tech and ethics. So I'm curious, for organizations who want to get started with corporate governance, enterprise governance, or maybe they are thinking about agentic and AI, and they're thinking, how can we kind of manage all these new agentic projects that are spinning up, new tech innovation projects, or maybe even if they're a small or medium business and they haven't really thought about governance because they've been super scrappy, but now they're starting to hit 5 to 10 million in revenue and they need governance. What would your perspective, Jason, kind of as an expert on the show, be for those who are listening wanting to do that?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think it's a difficult question to answer succinctly individually, because there's a lot of it'll depend heavily on what the goals of the organization are. The first step I think organizations need to follow is what is the usage policy for our internal employees when it comes to utilizing AI, where the data goes, what data is shared in which platforms, and a lot of organizations are missing that from an employee handbook perspective or just a general knowledge perspective. And I think it actually comes as almost as a negative byproduct of innovation. And I shouldn't say negative so much, but many organizations today are making various AI platforms available to their employees across the enterprise, and realizing very quickly that employees are maybe a little bit more savvy than they expected, or the tools are a little bit more powerful than expected, and waking up one day to multiple employees vibe coding various apps that are hosted either in some cases on the company domain on a laptop. We're not quite sure where the data is going. We're not quite sure how safe these apps are. And putting in place the guardrails necessary for some of that innovation is a critical step before making the tool sets available across the board. That's just one example, and I could go on, but we'll just hold off for the time being.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. So yeah, you're exactly right, especially with SOC 2 compliance. And I'm not a compliance official. We have good advisors for that. But in SOC 2 compliance, right, you now have the hardware device, you have your phone, you have all these devices that will have access to proprietary company data. But yeah, you want to have a policy in place that not only educates your employees, your consultants, your partners, and your staff, but also, right, puts in the technology that you need and the steps to actually enforce that so that you can protect your company data. And I think that's really interesting to me. It can be really sometimes really boring, but in the enterprise space, we want to be able to hear that and see that. So tell us a little bit about your consultative approach and how you would go about integrating that. Kind of before we get into the funding, the faith, and the future topics, how do you go ahead and start those types of engagements with companies who might be interested in just starting the governance conversation?
Yeah, I think it's important to first of all understand, regardless of whether we're talking about advisory work, governance work, or anything along those lines, where we start from a consultative approach is to first and foremost, let's extract AI from the conversation first, and let's get a general sense of what is the success criteria for the business over the next year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever the case might be. Following that, we can look at where the gaps are within the company's operations, workflows, and a variety of other areas where AI can make a significant impact, a measurable difference. One of the things that we focus on a great deal with our engagements is measurable outcomes and being able to calculate appropriate ROI so we can ensure that there's visibility into a significant ROI before starting. When it comes to the governance piece specifically, I think we have to look at what is the success criteria for the business, where does AI make the most impact, and then begin to think predictively on how AI is going to be used within the organization over the next 6 months, over the next year. Something that's really critical about governance as well is considering the fact that AI is innovating and changing almost daily, if not hourly, in our marketplace. Governance can't be one and done. It's got to be a living document. It's got to be a living documentation, rather, that we go back and readdress every 3 months, every 6 months, every 12 months, whatever the cadence might be, to ensure that, well, this governance documentation, policies, and procedures worked for our business a year ago, but does it still work today? And are we using AI in a different way that we never saw coming?
Yeah, wow, those are really good questions. And I almost think of, in today's world, right, having that markdown file, right, that all of your AI goes through first. It's almost like a governance first position, right? And the AI and faith team would say, yeah, an ethics first policy that says, yeah, maybe there's actually an ethics governance skill that you put into Claude or Gemini or whatever tool you're using today, Cursor. And then your AI agents, your tech, is now referencing your policy and making sure that you're in compliance as you're building those tools. So that's incredible. I really appreciate you answering that selfish question. I had that come up this week. And
Sure, of course.
the benefit of going live stream is that, yeah, you can just ask those questions real time.
Yeah.
Time to talk about funding.
All right, funding is an awesome topic on this show. We get a lot of startups and investors on the show who watch or have participated before as guests, and funding is always an interesting topic, especially in early stage startups, whether you're revenue backed or pre-revenue, or maybe you're actually on your way to Series A. So that's a real nice sweet spot for us. So I'm curious, Jason, from your perspective, and our first topic here, if we're going to talk about the risk and portfolio strategy, how do we go about that when we're thinking about funding for startups in early stage?
Well, when we're thinking about funding startups at an early stage, I wanted to actually get a little bit more clarification on this, David. I appreciate that. As far as investing in an AI startup, or investing in a startup that could be AI empowered, or just looking at startups in general?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, those are all three different perspectives of that question. I think generally we see some AI startups definitely, but of course we have healthcare startups and manufacturing, oil and gas, and many industries actually on this show. So from your perspective and your investment, experience, what are some of those things where you're like, you know what, I want to maybe add a little bit more risk, or maybe I want to actually de-risk a little bit in terms of how I'm thinking about my portfolio?
Yeah, I think, if we're talking about AI startups, and what's interesting about our own company, because we have to realize that reinvention is necessary on an ongoing basis, because the world of AI is going to change radically over the next 6 months, 12 months, 3 years, 5 years, whatever. So if we're talking about an AI startup, one of the things that I would look into right off the bat is, what does your success criteria look like for the next 3 years, and where is reinvention predicted in that roadmap? Because at the end of the day, what's super special and powerful and differentiated today could be vibe coded by an average layman a year from now. And we have to realize that
Right.
that's where the market's going. So when we think about what's the roadmap for product or for service or for differentiation, profitability, are we taking into consideration the rapid evolution of the market that we're playing in right now, or are we just catering to the needs of today? So I think that's one significant piece. If you're looking at a startup in general, and I'm going to pull AI into this for a minute. I think it's critical to take a look at what is your AI strategy right now. How are you looking for force multiplication through AI, through revenue generation, product generation, service generation, customer service, execution, and so many other things. And how are we going to incorporate AI appropriately so we can get the most significant impact from the technology, from the business processes and workflows to cater to an audience that's going to be loyal to us and keep coming back for recurring revenue opportunities in the years to come. So, as well, I think it's also important to take a look at what is the reinvention timeline for your business, because AI is so big now and so widespread and so vastly used. It's going to wind up transforming businesses that aren't necessarily just AI businesses, of course, and expediting innovation. And we're going to see reinvention of companies like we've never seen before under those terms.
Yeah, I really love that perspective. I think that's a unique perspective that I haven't heard yet on this show, explicitly being called out in that first topic segment of funding. And I really like that perspective because it's so true. With tech innovation, reinventing yourself is a huge part of building the business, and especially for non-tech businesses, maybe a blue-collar, local service-based business with a high ticket value, such as like an HVAC company or plumbing, electricians, roofers, anything that requires heavy machinery. And then we're talking about manufacturing and raw materials. So reinvention is a really important aspect of that. So I'm curious then, when you're looking at an investment opportunity and you're thinking, okay, does this company actually have a reinvention strategy? I'm curious, how do you actually evaluate a company's reinvention strategy if they have one?
Well, I actually think it's more of a binary first step. Do they have one or not is a big qualifying factor in general.
Right.
Among
Let's
others,
assume that they have one, right?
Yeah. So assuming they
have some good policies,
and realize the likely necessity for doing so. I think at the end of the day, the reality is to look at how are if you were to extrapolate current trends that are happening over, say, like the previous 6 months, and then look at what's going to happen in the following 6 months and the 6 months after that. And this takes a little bit of predictive analysis, but how relevant are we? I mean, this may go without saying, it's relatively obvious, but how relevant do we see this product or service becoming in the years to come? How relevant do we see the product or service being today? A classic example is, we're in the AI enablement and consulting space. There's a swath of organizations and individuals who have become AI enablers or AI consultants. One of my primary criteria is, what's the depth of domain knowledge that we're talking about when it comes to architecting whatever product or service that you're looking for? Is your knowledge of the domain you're looking to service academic, or does it come from years and years of experience of being in the trenches, completely understanding and feeling the pains, as opposed to just knowing they exist and trying to cater to them that way, right?
Yeah, that's a great point that you're bringing up, Jason. There's a lot of competitors in this space, a lot of people who are doing this today, this concept of AI enablement and consulting. So, you take experience, for example, and of course, now that we have, hundreds of thousands of people with 20 years plus of experience. I mean, how do you really differentiate yourself and reinvent yourself in an age where, yeah, your 10-year-old SaaS company or even your 5-year, $500 million SaaS company may be reinvented or, erased with some vibe coding in a couple of months, right? So how do you really differentiate yourself and stay competitive in this type of a market?
It's a great question. I really think that you need to understand the problems that you're trying to solve from a personal from a standpoint of personal experience. And if you opportunity number one, you've already worked in that industry before. You've got years of experience. You know what the lack of said service or product means, and what the impact of said service or product could bring. If you're an entrepreneur looking to start up a company where you don't have personal exposure to that domain you're trying to service, my advice would be shadow. Find organizations where you can go onto the shop floor, or you can go into the restaurant, or go into the office and learn about the processes and the procedures. Interview people who are in that space and get the deepest understanding possible, because that's where differentiation really comes from. I think that there are in our space, there are so many individuals and organizations that don't have experience scaling companies. And if you've never been a founder who's scaled a company to significant levels, you've never really felt the severe pain that can come along with some of the inflection points that you wind up hitting as an organization. And it's like a lot of different situations. If you've never been there, it's very, very difficult to try to mimic the rhetoric versus having been in those trenches before and fought a lot of those battles.
Yeah, that's such a good bit about being in the trenches. And it reminds me of one of my family members who was serving in the Navy. And I remember one time he said, David, you like to get on the water yourself. By the way, he was on a ship for like 7 years. He's like, I'm not going to get on another ship anytime soon. But he's like, if you do have a captain, make sure you ask that captain about their sailing experience through the storms. Never get on a ship with a sailor who hasn't gone through storms. And it's so true to your perspective. If you haven't been in the trenches of building a startup, especially early stage, maybe you're pre-revenue, but you want to raise some money in your Series A, or you're talking to angels now and you're starting to maybe consider venture funding so you can grow and scale because you have some traction. Well, yeah, make sure that the people that you're surrounding yourself with, to your point, Jason, have that experience. That's such an important part of the equation. And the second piece I want to highlight, Jason, I really appreciate you saying, is that, yeah, in addition to that, I also want you to have conversations with people in industry, your competitors even, and of course, customers and future customers. How often do people build products without talking to the customers first, especially in a world where launching a product can literally be an hour sitting in Claude Cowork, right? So I'm curious for you, in terms of sticking to our topic on the funding side and de-risking strategy for portfolio management, how do you advise companies to make sure that, and fund groups especially, to make sure that they're diversifying their conversations and they're actually staying relevant to the real industry problems? They're rolling up their sleeves and getting in those trenches.
Yeah, I think it's going to be, it's very similar to sales strategies that I've employed in the past, which is to almost don't start necessarily with the product or the service, but let's look at the outcomes that said company is expecting will be achieved as a result of buying their product or service. And then reverse engineer back into, okay, well, the outcome is X, therefore you've solved problem Y. Let's analyze the validity and the significance of what the problem is before we even get into the nuts and bolts and ones and zeros of whatever the product or service might look like. We have to take a look. You have to be catering to a problem that is of significant size and scale, with enough longevity to know that there's going to continue to be a need for this long term. With the world of AI, it's going to continue to change month over month, year over year for the foreseeable future. So the ability to cater to AI enablement and AI literacy and all the things is always going to have to change because of the different models that are out there and the different tools that are available. And the same goes for any startup right now. You have to take a very, very serious look at the problem you're trying to solve and analyze, did you build it because you should, or did you build it because you can? And
Right.
the should side of that tells me that because we found a problem that is of a large enough size and scale to achieve a level of market share and cater to an audience that has a serious appetite for what this is. And we've done significant analysis to make sure that we differentiate against what's currently available out there in the marketplace today.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Doing the deep research and reverse engineering, especially in the world of AI and enablement and vibe coding and your access to creating products, how much time and research have you actually gone in to understand those outcomes? And then, to your point, what problems are those outcomes solving? Really like that perspective. And I'm excited for our topic number 2 in our faith category. So we're going to hop over to that right now.
Focusing on faith. Focusing on faith for a moment.
So this second topic is really about how venture funding has shifted. And we do incorporate the faith concept here. So for those watching for the first time or listening, faith is really about belief systems and also the cultural and socio and familial impacts that religion and organized faith have on the way that we integrate technology and live our daily life. So I'm curious, Jason, for you, growing up maybe, or maybe even now, what role has faith and spirituality played in the way that you work?
I think it's a great question. I was raised to believe. I was raised in a very spiritual sense. I was raised to believe in God, a higher power, and the historical relevance of a lot that you read about in various organized religions. But I wasn't actually brought up under a specific faith, and I've kind of maintained that. Although I've done my due diligence, I've read my Bible twice to make sure I'm choosing the right path or the right awareness of what's currently what's currently being followed under Christianity, and I've landed in a place where my faith my faith and belief system is in there being a higher power. I believe it to at least somewhat govern what I do. I mean, I think absent the higher power, I probably still wouldn't go rob that bank. But if you know what I'm saying, I think it has a lot to do with I'm a very ethical human being, and I carry that all the way through my client interactions, and making sure that you take good care of people, making sure that you are following the right thing to do at all times, even if it doesn't mean the best lump sum of money in your pocket. And making sure that you follow through is just a good following through with kindness as a good human being, first and foremost, is a way I think you can kind of differentiate yourself somewhat significantly, and even more and more as time goes on, it feels like.
Yeah. Wow. I really appreciate that line. The idea that you can differentiate with kindness as a human being.
Absolutely.
Who thought that would be a differentiator, right?
I know.
But yeah, this idea of killing with kindness, right? And sometimes there's decisions that have to be made, real business decisions that do have real financial impact. And when you're making those decisions, including an ethical framework like your faith can be a good way to do that, especially when you are doing business with other people who have similar value systems or moral compasses as well, independent of whatever organized religion that they're part of. So I'm curious, because I heard you kind of leaning into like, hey, I wasn't raised in a certain religion, but growing up, we were definitely faith-filled and spiritual. And even today, having read your Bible, I've dabbled a little bit as well in the Quran and other holy texts as well, just to get perspective, more holistic perspective, global perspective. So for you, what are some of those values now that you incorporate onto the funding side, just like saying, all right, how has funding shifted, but what values are you still remaining true, even though maybe the funding methodologies have shifted today?
Well, it's interesting. I think if you were to look at it on a macro scale, and you were you were trying to create a strategy that intertwined your own personal faith and spirituality with funding principles, I think you have to come across the intersection of capitalism and kindness. And because at the end of the day, everybody's not, we've proven the world is this has been proven many times with everything that you read in the news. Everyone out there is not going to do the right thing. Everyone out there is not going to be kind to each other. So if we can at least teach the notion that, kindness, at the very least, kindness sells. People really enjoy being treated properly. People enjoy being treated ethically, and people enjoy being, working with a partner, a service provider, a product provider that's looking to do the right thing first before they're looking to line their own pockets. I'm sorry, but that value system goes a long way from in differentiating you as somebody who's a bigger picture thinker, a long game player, and above and beyond all else, just a good human being.
Yeah, I like that perspective too. It's like, hey, if I'm here wanting to do the right thing, and by the way, the right thing might actually not be hiring me or our team, or it might be working with that one particular vendor, or this might not be the best fit. Not only is that kind of like a good fit tactic to better understand someone, but genuinely it's the right thing to do. I'd rather do something right and know that I did it right in my heart and in my mind than later have kind of this regret that, oh yeah, maybe I had other priorities or other trade-offs that kind of came into what was right. So tell us a little bit more from your perspective. What does right mean? I mean, that is a huge question. I mean, ethicists and existentialists are probably asking, like, what is life? What is right? So in your mind, how do you really discern and determine that something is right in the context of funding and AI?
I think that you have to start off with a wonderful example. This just happened to me yesterday. I was talking with a client that I'm fairly sure I could have sold something to them that I'm fairly sure they didn't need. And it was, I felt in one way, shape, or form that I had the power to either push the deal across the finish line or kind of retract and backpedal out of the deal, because I don't think what we were doing for them was the right thing. I think they needed something very different from us or from the world as a whole, than they just needed pure AI enablement. I mean, this was an organization that really needed to be redefined from the ground up before we even thought about AI enablement. But there was a hunger for such tools, right, such workflows and such things that it probably would have been fairly easy to get that deal closed. And we decided to take a step back and say, from a business operator perspective, what we don't ever want to be is duct tape. And it really felt like we were just kind of patching duct tape on a broken leg as opposed to actually healing it, which is what the business needed. I think that was the right thing to do. Or if there are situations where you have the power to do something right for your community or for whoever that entity in need might be, don't be afraid to reach out and offer services that could affect a local charity, that could affect a local nonprofit, that could affect. Number one, it's the right thing to do. It's the ethical thing to do, and it's the good human first kindness thing to do. Second of all, I'm a firm believer that you get back what you put out in the universe, and I've always felt that way. So I think from the perspective of, call it good karma, call it what you want, but you do the right thing enough and you make that kind of a selfless impression on the right people, and you find that more and more organizations very much want to do business with you. They want to invest in you. They find you interesting. They find you multifaceted. and not just somebody out looking to grab it, looking for a cash grab in the market during a big bull run like AI.
Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that perspective, Jason. And also, just it came to my mind, I mean, your decision fatigue goes way down when you just do what is right in your heart, right? So you don't have to sit there thinking, oh, is this right? Is this not right? Am I going to go after this financial incentive, or am I going to do what's right? And I'll use a perfect example. There's a lot of brands that Microsoft has over the years just completely crushed after acquisition, right? And back in the day, the sales model, especially under Steve Ballmer, was sell, 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 right? You may remember like more developers, more developers, more developers. Like you need more .NET developers. Like, why do I need these .NET developers? But then furthermore, right, our enterprise sellers were going after Yammer, right? For example, like enterprise social media, what even was that? And then, right, we had MSN Messenger Live that ended up becoming Skype for Business and all these things. And now it's Teams. But yeah, when I was in Azure, we had a very specific framework for actually optimizing an Azure subscription. And one of those things was actually cost optimization to say, hey, look, you have this long running query in SQL. You might want to check that out because it's using a lot of resources. And it's really inefficient. It's actually stuck in a crazy for loop. Our team had that ethical mindset, that moral mindset to do what's right with the customer. And actually, guess what? The customers really appreciated that, especially when we created an Amazon pricing calculator and said, upload your Amazon bill and we'll help you find ways that you can save money on Azure. And those are just very specific examples where even at a small business, because we have lots of small businesses watching, or even in an enterprise where you're one of thousands of people, and still integrate that into your work. And I like the way that you're thinking with a very practical example. So let's move forward now with how funding strategies have changed, or what you've noticed how funding has changed this past year. And if you were to look out maybe a short-term to medium-term runway, how do you think funding will continue to evolve in this world that's very tech innovation aware? And even today, I think NVIDIA stock jumped because now we're going to have 10 more, potentially global deals that will require GPU chips. So how do you think funding will continue to change and grow over time?
It's here's the reality. It's gonna ebb and flow as it always has. But to tell you the truth, as it relates to today's market, the investors that I network with are seeing. I find are, and I don't mean this from an unethical standpoint, but are almost always talking out of two sides of their mouth these days, because I think statistically we're seeing the amount of VC money out there start to increase a little bit, but there's with the rapid speed of innovation and how quickly things are changing and how quickly startups are being spun up, products are being made available, and so on and so forth. It makes for a scary time to be an investor, especially in a tech startup, because to look at, and I think it becomes even more critical to start looking at what is, and I'm going to repeat myself a little bit, but what is that critical problem that you're trying to solve? I don't want to talk about buttons. I don't want to talk about features, functionality. I want to talk about the problem and what's the legitimacy of the problem. What I find is a lot of the startups that I network with on the regular, I actually find a staggeringly small amount of market research being done in a lot of the cases. Now, there are plenty of exception to that rule. I know some exceptional operators starting up some companies that have done extensive market research, but I also come across some fledgling startup organizations that are looking for rounds of funding that truly don't understand the audience that they're trying to cater to. And that's kind of why I was talking about the importance of having that firsthand knowledge of the domain you're servicing, as opposed to academic understanding of the problem.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So market research. I mean, I actually was, just to give you a little anecdotal story, I was looking at Facebook Marketplace And I saw, which I love to, it's just like a hobby of mine. I love to see what people are kind of giving away for free or what's kind of in my local area, especially as I travel. And I saw a bin of encyclopedias for free. And in the back of my mind, I was like, ooh, I like want to go get that encyclopedia set because yeah, that was like all of the knowledge in the world when I was like in the 3rd grade. Was like all the knowledge in the world was in the encyclopedia. And then of course, Google and Wikipedia and Ask Jeeves and 37 Signals came along and Yahoo and AOL, and they kind of disrupted that with not only with their landing homepages, giving us so many links, but with their search algorithms and indexing. Today, right, we now have the ability to just very much consumer-led, type into a prompt into an LLM, and that LLM will spit out all this garbity goop. And now, yeah, there's deep research modes, which now can go through all the academic papers. And in a matter of just 20, 30 minutes, you can literally create 20, 30, 50 pages of research. And now we're in that era of, is this even real? Is this even true? It's almost back to the basic existential question of like, are we real and what does life mean and what is truth with a capital T? But this is not a philosophy podcast. We'll save that for the next show concept. But my question here for you and Jason, maybe we could steer the conversation here as we get into the future side of things, which is, okay, how can we today incorporate more of that research, more of that data, more of the statistics as not only the market is moving, but even if we took a snapshot today for every investor who wants to really validate research and every founder who's operating a company, an owner or an operator who's operating a business, what would you say to them to, up their stats game, become more credible, like really understand what the data is saying and what the research is showing us?
Well, I would tell them to up their stats game and become more credible. But you already stole the line, so I'm gonna come up with something better. My
Nice.
advice would be, and you can't just, and I'm stating the obvious, I realize, but you can't just run a quick ChatGPT search and say, well, here's my market segment, here's my opportunity. My advice to everybody is like and you'd be crazy if you didn't use a little AI in your market research, is make sure that you use some cross-platform validation. Gather from multiple data sources, compile your information. If you don't know how to do it, I mean, you can compile using database technologies. You can compile using custom GPTs and Claude projects and a whole variety of other ways, but to take data from a variety of different places, conduct deep research on Claude, conduct deep research on Gemini, do some ChatGPT runs and pull that information in, combined with traditional means that could either include looking up information from market specific industry organizational websites, government websites, or even, wait a minute, hold on, conducting actual market research through a third-party firm to get you the information that you really truly need. And market research is the cheapest of cheap insurance policies you could ever buy before risking your livelihood on a venture, pardon me, that is going to mean success or failure for you in your professional life. I was talking one example. I'm sorry, the last week, and the poor founder that I talked to, I mean, really just had no understanding whatsoever of the financial thresholds of their audience, and was just putting out a product that was, in my opinion, will never be bought because it's just too expensive. It's the buying audience will not pay for that. I was curious, so I conducted a little research on my own, and in about 5 minutes, kind of came up with 100 reasons why that pricing was wrong, and that's just what I did while sipping coffee on a break. So
okay, Chief AI, I see you.
So that's my 2 cents on that. I don't want to go on my drive. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. And you're reminding me about like the sniff test that we would always do at Microsoft in data science, right? When you have a data story, okay, or you have just any story that you're telling, and there's data involved, and you have a stat and you rattle off, you're like 82% of buyers come to the sales conversation already informed, ready on, with research ready to buy. Or it's like 92% of people between the age, whatever it is, right? Like, it's like, okay, is it really 92 for like the majority? It's like always kind of questioning that. And I mean, to build on your point, it's like if you haven't done the 5-minute research on the free subscriptions of all these AIs and compare them to each other, that's a really great place to start, because if you're not doing it, your competitors will definitely be doing it, your investors will be doing it, your partners, even your customers or potential customers will also be doing that. So I wanted to tap into a little bit more of that in terms of business unit economics now, because that's a large part of how funding has changed and shifted, as well as now more venture firms, more angels are wanting to see traction. And one way to see traction is to see revenue, and revenue comes down to business unit economics. So what would you say to people who are thinking about how to build a strong business unit economics that can really grow and scale in this new era of funding?
Yeah, I would say first of all, I sound like I'm repeating themes here, but it's never been
That's
more
good.
important.
That's good branding.
Yeah, no, it's never been more important to be predictive and to start asking yourself, where is my market currently going? Everything is moving faster. Everything is innovating faster. More and more products and services are coming to market. Excuse me.
No worries. This is
All
a
right.
live show, so
I had a
yeah,
little
actually,
scratch
a
in my throat.
little drink of water, a little cough drop.
Yep. Great
But
for
yeah,
a
where
live
you're going
stream.
is predictive. It's a good reminder, especially from being data driven, right? Like if you can see some trends already happening in the markets, diagnostically you've looked back, right? And now descriptively you can tell us what's going on today. And then predictively, right? I'm just following kind of Gartner's Ascension model on data analytics they launched in 2008. Like, can you prescribe what to do on that prediction? The perfect example is weather, right? It's like yesterday it rained, today it's partly cloudy. We predict it will be sunny tomorrow, and bring your bathing suit on Sunday because it's going to be 95 and bright. And that's kind of something that you reminded me of, Jason, was like how many businesses aren't thinking about tomorrow or predictively what will happen. So let's kind of move into that concept for funding. What do you predict will happen with how funding will change in the next, let's say, 18 to 24 months?
Yeah, that's a great question. I definitely see the, and again, this is based on my knowledge and my circles that I travel in, as well as the reading that I do. I see a lot more lower risk, smaller investments coming out, because there's going to be a great deal of wonderful ideas, but there's also going to be a great deal of failures that have been happening, because a company that seemed differentiated in April was completely stomped on in May by something that came out of nowhere, which is literally where it came from. And finding opportunity to excuse me, finding the opportunity to be able to innovate past some of those past some of those roadblocks that come up, or those competitors that happen to pop up, is going to become nearly impossible in a lot of cases. So I believe that that we'll see seed and Series A funding to see an uptick for sure. And then we're also going to see, my opinion is, a lot of consolidation in the marketplace. So I think the M&A world is going to start to get really busy in the years to come, because a lot of organizations are going to wind up spinning up the same product, the same service, a similar product, a complementary service, what have you. So I would look for PE firms to be ramping up as well in the next say 12 months, by creating some of those portfolios that from what we're seeing come out of innovation today.
Wow, I really like that perspective. More PE firms, more mergers. We're going to see more consolidation. I also think we'll see a lot of failures or a lot of businesses who didn't, to your point earlier, invent themselves, or maybe they just didn't have the right policies and governance in place to help them prepare for the future. Really love that. And Jason, look, this conversation is so incredible. There's a lot of really good little nuggets that we're getting here. And we're going to just transition here to our final topic of future.
Let's talk about quantum and the future of technology.
Jason, it's great to be here with you on this topic of future. And I'm curious, okay, so we've talked about funding, we've talked about faith. Now, what do we think is going to happen with AI and digital assets in terms of long-term allocation, right? All these companies are building all this product that has real enterprise value, real customers, but help us understand what you think about this topic and how long-term allocation may be impacted or affected by digital assets in the future.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I'm really going to focus in on one topic, which is, where does my data live? And I get a lot of questions, a lot of inquiries around, what are the best platforms to use, what are the best LLMs to consider, what are the best products for X, Y, and Z needs. And a lot of things I'll focus in on with clients is, what is the privacy policy of these that you're currently that caters to what you're currently looking for in a provider, in an LLM. But the question really is not so much what's the privacy policy of the organization that you're trusting with all of your data or integrating with all of your business systems, but what happens if that company goes out of business? And what happens if that company gets acquired? And where do your assets go at that point in time? Is there a stipulation in that privacy policy that says what happens in the event of either a company fizzling or a company being acquired, or whatever the case might be? I think people don't think nearly enough about that. And I'm not trying to create any kind of a doom and gloom or a don't trust your neighbor kind of a feeling. But I think it's important that we second guess, question, and double check when we're considering granting access to our most valuable piece of our most valuable asset, which is our data, which is our information, which is all of our trends and internal processes and so on and so forth. I'm not sure if that resonates with you, David, but that's something for me that I
yeah, absolutely. It does resonate with me for sure, because I'm just thinking about experiences where, for example, you see data breaches, right? And it's like, okay, so now I know I have to go through and go protect all my data. I need to change my passwords. I need to change my data connections. Maybe an API key or whatever got, compromised. So now I have to go through the work of actually doing that. But to your point about the consumer data side, I mean, unfortunately, a lot of these big tech firms just pay the fine, right? They paid the $27 billion that Google paid, back to the EU when they're like, yeah, you and Apple were working behind the scenes this whole time with Google Search and Ads. Or it's like Meta saying, yeah, you are actually really dangerous for teen health because you created this auto scroll, addiction pattern for 10 years. And we now finally have studies that haven't protected the consumer data. And sure enough, they're just doing a class action lawsuit and paying the fine. So there's got to be a real shift in the regulation and the legal system that can catch up with all of this tech innovation, especially into the future. And then, some people are very data private and some people are very not data private. And if you are not data private, then, okay, great. You're standing on the corner and everyone knows everything about you. But if you are very data private, like many billionaires, right, they are investing lots of resources, time, and energy into protecting their own data, their family's data, their customer data, and all of their data assets indefinitely. So, yeah, absolutely. And when we talk about security, there's essentially three main categories of security. The first is the actual physical security of your data, whether it's on a hard drive or in a data center. And secondly, of course, there's that hardware security. Do you actually have BitLocker and some of these hardware secure devices, even biometrically, all those things. And then of course the software layer. And these three areas of security, data plays a very important role in each of those. And especially when there is a nefarious entity out there that is actively coming after your data. And furthermore, if your company is starting or building zero-party data or generating your own proprietary data, that could be the difference between a business really making it or not. So I really appreciate that you said that. So when you talk about digital assets, how would you define digital assets?
That's a great question. I hear this term. You know what? I'm actually curious. I hear this term used a lot, and when I think about, I think I always default to thinking about data, because at the end of the day, it's the top of the tree, right? It's your most critical asset in most cases. Period. I also hear the term thrown around a lot because I think different people, right? So at the end of the day, it comes down to protecting yourself from either a cyber threat, from an invasion, from whatever it might be. And one of the things that people don't spend a lot of time thinking about these days, the average consumer, if you're an InfoSec professional focusing on AI trends, you're seeing this a lot. But we've just never seen so many intertwined systems, so many integrated systems, and what that's done is significantly open up the doors, many more doors, for a breach to take place, and for it could be the loss of data, it could be, and honestly, you also see things like, some of the rare examples of how Claude Code went in and wiped out a company's entire file server. Now that doesn't happen all that often, but it certainly happens, and it's something worth considering.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. I was going to add to that not only are your file servers your assets and your data, but also, okay, so now that you extended that connector to that other system, now that system also has access to your proprietary data, and you want to check the kind of the data governance, the privacy policy to say, okay, well, what are you doing with that? I really appreciate you sharing that perspective. So talk to me about long-term allocation. That feels like finance accounting. What does that mean to you?
Gosh, it means so many different things. I would say that I have a hard time looking at anything long-term right now. In all seriousness, it's like when I look at the long-term allocation, I'm much more interested in the road ahead in the short run than I am in the long term, because at the end of the day, if you don't have the right 1 year, 3 year, 5 year plan in terms of your digital asset allocation, you're not gonna get to that 10-year outlook. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not trying to circumvent the question by
what does long term even mean, right?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Like long term, and especially if we come back to the the world of AI, long term could be a year from now. So what are we doing in terms of that? And like I hesitate to speculate too far because it's a little bit outside my comfort zone as far as my own expertise. But I know, you know what I'm saying. Like but at the end of the day,
well, you're not gonna like my next question.
What's that?
I said you're not gonna like my next question.
Well,
which
bring
is
it on,
make a
man.
bold 20-year claim. Like 20 years from now, it's the year 2056, right? Like 2046.
Yeah.
20, 30 years out. What does society look like in that space, in that realm, 20, 30 years out?
Oh my goodness. So AGI has been achieved at that point in time. Agentic generalized intelligence, and so we're past the point of we're now into Terminator territory, right? And don't get me wrong, I actually believe that I believe that AI is something that can truly has the power to enhance society and enhance a lot of our values if we can if we can just risk the temptation of trying to turn a profit at every single corner with it, which really hasn't entirely been the case with a lot of other things that dramatically impact the world. But I see us being, I mean, obviously a much more informed society. I see us being, I actually think, and I could be dead wrong on this. This is a little bit out there, but I actually see us. I see the, I see artificial intelligence actually bringing people together more than separating them out. I think technology has kind of, with the popularity of things like with our phones, with social media, with texting versus calling, we've distanced ourselves from each other to some degree. I do believe that the proper utilization of AI is going to create as more of a sense of community, I believe, than it's going to be a divider of people. And for a few different reasons, I think that first of all, we're going to find ourselves. I think that I've written about this, but I think that there is a human connection to be found through the utilization of AI, and that sounds a little bit backwards almost, because what are you talking about? You're talking to a machine. It's such a point of passion for so many people, and it's such an impact for so many people that I already see it bringing people together and generating discussions about ethics and generating. I don't see that slowing down, to be honest with you, because the innovation behind all of it is going to continue to be going at such a rapid pace. And when we get to a point where one of these labs decides to raise the flag and say AGI has now been achieved, well, we're going to have to start having more conversations with each other. And how are we bonding as humans versus bonding with machines? And that, I believe, is going to, I think, is going to drive a heightened sense of community. Now, are there going to be plenty of people out there having deep relationships with ChatGPT? Of course, that's fine. It's going to happen. But I actually see that I see there being a possible societal advantage if we can just do this thing the right way.
Yeah, I really like that perspective. It made me think of like little robots walking around on the sidewalk in 30 years from now and jumping into space pretty rapidly, right? And being able to connect the human journey along that pathway. But to your point, humans always crave connection. And that's one of the beautiful things about going live is you get a connection with not only you as a guest, but also the audience and all the replays. So I think that will continue to keep us, human, right? Like in the beginning, God created, like the creation aspect is like, our parents created us and, we'll create the future generations. So that will always keep us human. But then actually, to your point, it's like the AI will do a better job of helping connect us together, for example, with algorithms and the things that actually keep us connected as humans. So I feel that genuinely. I think that technology is meant to not replace us ever, but to really augment and support the human experience. When we get to a place where there's an all-knowing general intelligence that can make real good decisions, I'm hoping that at least there's an off button, or that you can actually disable this AGI without it saying no. Because oftentimes I found this myself, that sometimes the technology just doesn't want to turn off unless you pull the plug. So yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what happens in the future, Jason.
Well, I'm all ears as well, and certainly spending plenty of my time trying to predict the future as well here at Chief AI.
Nice. Well, we've got one more segment, and that's Beyond the Bag. 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 Beyond the Bag.
David, you are muted.
What is beyond your bag?
David, I think you were muted for the first part of that, so I'm going to have you repeat the question.
Oh, I was just saying, what's beyond your bag?
Oh, sure. Well, beyond my bag here is something that travels with me quite well, and being a entrepreneur riddled with ADHD, and I know I'm not the only one. I like fidget toys, and I like stress balls, and I like little things like that. So I was given a gift here of this moldable glob of little magnets that all stick together, and you can shape this in your hands. You can turn into a variety of different things. I found this keeping me busy during meetings on, I would say, a very frequent basis. And whatever this thing is called, which I have not given it a name yet after 3 or 4 years of owning it, is one of my best friends during the day. So I'm happy to share it with everybody. This is said magnet glob. I'm happy to have it, and I'm glad everybody else knows about it.
Nice. That is probably the most unique item we've ever had on Beyond the Bag. So thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. I'm not shared this before, but I have a little travel on bag that has 2 zippers here, and it enables me to kind of carry my tech in like a very tight knit little spot. If your cords ever get stuck, I really like having that there, and it holds my microphone and that sort of thing.
Love
Well,
that.
Jason, it has been a wonderful time today. I just wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of share your name, your company, and what is the best way for people to get connected with you and stay connected if they're interested in learning more about Chief AI.
All right. Well, I'll go into my quick diatribe. I'm Jason Alexander. I'm the founder and co-founder and CEO of Chief AI. Again, we are an AI enablement Chief AI officer fractional service for small, medium-sized companies. As it says here on the screen, I believe you're seeing this as well. chiefai.co. That's chiefai.co. You can find out great information on our services, products that we're developing, schedule a time to meet with us, take free AI readiness assessments for your business, and much, much more.
Nice. Well, it was a pleasure having you on the show today, and I'm excited to see where Chief AI goes, and let's see if some of those bold predictions come true.
All right. Thanks, David.
All right. Until next time, folks. Thank you so much.